Hey everybody, and welcome back to Pixel Junkies. Today I'm looking at Mad Max by Avalanche, the makers of Just Cause, and published by Warner Brothers, known for the Batman Arkham series. If you follow gaming, you'll know that Warner Brothers are pretty hit and miss when it comes to the functionality of their games on PC. More recently in everyone's mind is the train wreck that was Batman Arkham Knight, which was actually pulled from sales because of how broken it was. Don't worry though, Avalanche have done a fantastic job making sure that everything works in Mad Max. Throughout my playthrough, I didn't encounter any graphical issues or broken gameplay mechanics. If you were concerned, don't be. Mad Max, the game, I believe, slots itself into the movie timeline right before Fury Road. Clarity on the actual timeline is a bit of a mess, but if you pay close attention, it seems like some motivations for Max in Fury Road are directly impacted by the events of the game. That's as spoilery as I'll get. If you want to know more, you'll have to play it. Or Google it. Either or. The game starts out with Max on the move, heading for what he calls the Plains of Silence. It's not made clear whether or not this place actually exists, because before he gets there, he's ambushed by a group of warboys under the command of Scabrous Scrotus, the main big bad guy, who also has a horn for a penis.
Listen, my apostles of Alpha!
Max, after getting everything, including his interceptor, taken from him, fights back and leaves Scrotus with a hell of a scar. This is literally the opening cinematic, which immediately sets the tone for the rest of the game. After being thrown from the back of Scrotus' war rig, Max is stranded in the middle of nowhere. With the help of a dog, he finds water and then bumps into a proclaimed Blackfinger mechanic named Chumbucket, who's had a vision to build the ultimate speed machine, and, for a while, has been looking for a driver, or as he calls it, a saint.
Don't kill Chumbucket, please! Hey!
Why shouldn't I?
Because I know you.
With no other options, Max follows Chumbucket back to his hideout, and together they begin roaming the wasteland and sculpting their creation. From here on, the game opens up a lot. There are plenty of activities to do, all of which either reward you with scrap or help reduce the threat of Scrotus' army. Scrap is the effective currency of the wasteland, which can be used to get new parts and gear for both Max and the Magnum Opus. The customization for both is very cool and very extensive, everything from a beard and face paint to bolt-covered gauntlets for Max, and ridiculous exhaust pipes and a harpoon gun for the Magnum Opus. All of these upgrades are purchased with scrap, but most will need to be unlocked by lowering Scrotus' threat on specific regions. The lower the threat, the fewer war parties you'll come across roaming the wastes. This is sort of where the game tries to walk the line between the main story and all the extra side stuff, which for the most part it does quite well, depending on the type of player you are. If you're like me and took your time, all 70 hours of it, and went to each and every scrap location, minefield, balloon, enemy camp, and completed all the optional objectives, you'll effectively be massively overleveled even for the final mission in the game, which I flew through with ease. Ideally, and probably most likely, the game is played with a healthy mix of main story and side stuff to help balance the combat. It's not a massive problem, but when taking the completionist approach, it starts to pull away some of the terror and mystery from the atmosphere that the Mad Max films consistently master. There's no real sense of danger when you can take on 40 enemies and a boss without breaking a sweat. In fact, for the most part, I rarely needed to use the water canteen, the main way to recover health in the game. Though, I suppose if this is the kind of thing that bothers you, you can just take off some upgrades for both Max and the Magnum Opus and scale the difficulty to taste. Much of the combat, on foot at least, is all about timing, and if you played any of the Batman games, you'll feel at home here. The concept is pretty much the same. Wait for a button to appear above an enemy's head, push it, and then proceed to turn him into paste. Rinse and repeat. It does get repetitive, but fortunately I think the on-foot combat sections are broken up just enough by car combat as to not seem boring. And the car combat, unlike Batman, feels entirely new. Once you start unlocking parts for the Magnum Opus, you'll have ramming bars, armor, spinning wheel things that shred enemy vehicles, a mounted sniper for long-range attacks, and a harpoon gun which you can use to pull apart just about anything. You can even pull the driver out of a moving car if you want. Or a sniper from a tower. Or by contrast, pull the tower he's in apart. A little later in the game, you'll even get what's called a thunderpoon, which is not a harpoon that shoots electricity like I thought, but in fact is in essence a rocket launcher. You'll become good friends with the thunderpoon. A few missions into the game, you'll come across a stronghold, a large settler outpost with potential allies inside that can passively help you fight Scrotus' army. In order to get that help though, you'll need to complete various exploration missions to recover bits and pieces required at the stronghold. Everything from recovering health and ammo to automatically collecting dropped scrap in the wasteland within the stronghold's region. There's even a project that collects scrap for you when you're not playing the game. Though it's not much, and I believe it caps out at 500 after about a week of inactivity. In total, there are 4 strongholds, each which have their own series of projects to be completed, and their own passive benefits, some of which, like scrap collecting, stack. So if you complete them all early on, by the end of the game, you'll be raking in more than you know what to do with. The environments in the game are, simply put, breathtaking. When you think wasteland desert, you think sand. In Mad Max, you'd be amazed at just how many variations of that there are. Some places look almost alien and capture the tone of the films perfectly. The weather feels very at home too, with deafening sandstorms that destroy visibility and fling countless pieces of debris that can damage both Max and the magnum opus. There's also apocalyptic thunderstorms that detonate like dynamite around you. Some of the more impressive lightning I've seen in a game, and yes, like everything else in a storm, it can hurt you. Once the storms finally end, you can get back to exploring the wasteland. Out here there are no load screens. All the camps, interiors, and elaborate underground sections are all openly accessible. The only load screen you'll run into is popping in and out of a stronghold, which in some respects is a good thing, because it means those annoying war boys won't be able to get in and mess up your shit. You'll also hit a load screen when you fast travel, which is to be expected, except when you use it, you always get stuck with the magnum opus. This is okay most of the time, except when you'd rather be driving a different car, specifically the buggy used to sniff out minefields. Some of these locations can be a significant distance away, and considering the buggy has no real form of defense, it can make fending off war parties on your trek a massive pain. It also sucks when you finally get to a minefield and then blow yourself to bits and have to drive back there all over again. A cool feature of the game is the need to refuel, considering many open-world car-based games these days gloss over the whole idea, like GTA or The Crew. It's an additional element that adds to the survival-oriented atmosphere the game tries to create. Obviously, there are no gas stations out here, so you'll need to find it scattered around the wasteland. Don't worry though, it's not really as much of a hassle as it might sound. A full tank of fuel can last for a day's worth of playing, and if you complete a certain stronghold mission, it'll automatically refill your tank when you fast travel back there. The real killer of fuel is the side burner upgrade, which you can use to cripple enemy vehicle armor or burn up any enemies trying to jump onto your car. Just be careful you don't screw yourself. If you're a photographer or even someone who makes machinima, you'll want to check out Mad Max's capture mode. In it, there's a pretty extensive camera where you can adjust filters, depth of field, blur amount, angle, yada yada, then take a screenshot with the Steam hotkey. There's also a video toggle, which essentially becomes the game's co-op. Controller 1 plays the game, then plug in a second controller and take hold of the camera, moving independently of Max. It's unfortunate that you need 2 people, but still, it's a fairly powerful tool for making videos, if that's your thing. Like most games these days, many of the missions in Mad Max have a brief cutscene and then give you a waypoint to go to. This formula is fine, but gives players a reason to skip cutscenes or tune out completely when it comes to exposition. Except for one mission that has no cutscenes, backstory, or waypoints. In fact, it's very easily missed if you're not careful.
Ain't no sweet talking to you, is there?
Throughout the wasteland there are historic relics, essentially photos and notes from before the fall of humanity. One of these relics is a photo of a gas station beside a highway with a red circle around it. This location is actually in-game, and if you can find it, you'll unlock a brand new set of tires for the magnum opus. It's unfortunate that it's a unique mission, because I think the game could have used more of them. Trying to boil down the potential location just by looking at a photo was frustrating but fun at the same time. Then being rewarded with a sweet set of slicks at the end definitely made it all worth it. Considering I wasn't much of a fan of the car handling in Just Cause, I'm happy to say that the handling in Mad Max is actually really good. It's certainly not simulation, but it's also not so arcadey as to be unplayable. Looking at you, Saints Row. When cars start to slide, there's a good chance you're not going to save it, which is somewhat realistic on sand or gravel, but it does get aggravating when you're in the middle of one of the game's many death run races. It also doesn't help when the AI constantly try to crash you off the road, essentially forcing you to restart if you're chasing a legendary time. Through Max's travels, he encounters two prisoners of a stronghold, a girl named Hope and her daughter Glory. In an effort to get Max's help, she tells him about the remains of their abandoned war rig after being ambushed by buzzards. Her attempts to get his attention become a recurring theme. It's never really explained why Hope and Glory put so much faith into Max, because after losing his family, it doesn't really seem like he wants to get too attached to anybody. Still, it would seem Hope has some sort of vision, and after watching Max take part in the Gastown races and take down Scrotus's right-hand man, Stank Gum, her trust sets itself in stone. In the end, a number of tiny story arcs throughout the game flourish and come to a head. Frankly, I thought the story mode, even with all the side missions, was a little short. It's unfortunate that the game relied so heavily upon optional activities. In fact, I was upwards of 70% complete without really touching the story, going bare minimum with the required objectives until I had all of the regions completely cleared. It's not unreasonable then to see why so many people find this game endlessly repetitive. A good chunk of your time will be spent doing aimless tasks. That said, there really wasn't any point that I felt bored. Breaking it up with stronghold missions, wasteland missions, and the occasional story mission made it feel solid enough. I just wish it was a longer experience. Once you finish the game, you'll unlock Max's Road Warrior jacket and the Interceptor from the films, which is pretty badass. The car itself isn't upgradable, but frankly it's already fast and strong enough. And to the hardcore fans wondering, no, there's no knife or bomb under the car. I was disappointed too. Visually, Mad Max is one of the prettiest games on the market right now. The lighting is superb, the texture fidelity, the explosions are spectacular, and the variety of locations really cement the wasteland into the Mad Max universe. While grinding out those hundreds of collectibles, it's honestly what kept me interested. The sounds of the wasteland are impressive too, particularly the raspy, crackly engine sounds, not only from the Magnum Opus, but all of the cars. The only weak link in the chain is the soundtrack. For much of the game, the soundtrack takes a back seat. I can count on one hand the number of times it attempted to become a mood setter, and those few times it did a decent job, if sounding a little generic. Unlike Fury Road, which essentially sat its soundtrack at the helm, the game's score falls well short in comparison. Why Avalanche didn't call up Tom Holkenberg, the composer for Fury Road, who has done game soundtracks before, is beyond me. Still, it's not enough to sour the experience. Thankfully, the game's level design and environments do most of the mood setting themselves. From alien wastelands to dark, terrifying corridors, there's plenty of shifts in tone that will keep you interested to the end. Overall, Mad Max was a super fun experience that left me wanting more, and with 70 hours worth of playtime, I think we can all agree I got my money's worth. The only question now is, hey Avalanche, when are you making another one? Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more of things where I talk about games, or even all the other crap we make, then hit that subscribe button. Come on, it's only a button. It's just a button, man, come on. I can't go anywhere until you're hitting the X up.